Hi, I'm Andri. Before bed one night, I heard my own wife whispering on the phone, planning to dump me in a nursing home like I was some burden she couldn't wait to get rid of. My heart didn't just break, it froze. I stayed quiet, pretending to sleep, while she plotted my disappearance. 5 years later, she became the patient begging for mercy from the man she once tried to erase. It was one of those quiet nights where everything felt too still, too perfect. I had my mug of chamomile tea, the jazz record spinning something from Coltrane, and the old floorboards creaking under the weight of memory more than age. That house, it held more than walls. It held decades of routine, of choices made and not made, of silence where there should have been conversation. My wife Denise had already gone to bed, at least that's what I thought. The lights in the hallway were dim, the kind of dim that feels like a stage set, waiting on a performance you didn't ask for. I sat in my recliner, the same one I'd had since the 90 seconds, with my mama's Bible sitting on the side table. It had been there ever since she passed. I never moved it. That book was her voice, when she wasn't there to speak. They say silence can be peaceful. But sometimes, it's just the space where betrayal breathes. I reached to turn the record over, when I heard something not loud, not clear, but something. Faint voices, muffled, coming from the living room. Denise, on the phone, her voice low, almost like she didn't want the walls to know what she was saying. After Thanksgiving, he goes straight to the nursing home. I already spoke to the manager. I froze, just like that. The kind of freeze that makes your joints lock up, like even your body don't want to believe what your ears just heard. I leaned into the doorway, not making a sound. Just listening. Just existing. She kept talking names, arrangements, plans like I was a package being shipped out. I didn't move. I didn't blink. I just stood there, thinking about all the nights we laughed in that same living room. The vows, the kids, the struggles. Me pulling double shifts as a driver just so we could keep that house, so she could rest. Trust doesn't die loud. It fades in whispers you were never meant to hear. And that's exactly what happened. My trust didn't explode, it cracked, slow and cold. I backed away, trying not to make the floor creak. But it did, just once. Silence. Denise went quiet. I knew she heard it. I knew she knew someone had been listening. I stepped into the bedroom, sat down slow. My heart was pounding like it was trying to punch its way out of my chest. I didn't cry. I didn't even get mad, not right away. I just sat there, stunned. She was plotting to get rid of me. The woman I gave everything to. And the worst part? She was calm about it. Like it was already done. I stared at the wall, at the picture of us in '89, in front of our first car, arms around each other like we were unbreakable. You think you got time to fix what's broken, but sometimes, time runs out before the truth shows up. I remembered how she told me to retire early. Said I deserved it. Now I knew. It wasn't love. It was part of the plan. I sat there for what felt like hours, staring at that record spinning nothing but static now. All those years, all that loyalty. What did it buy me? A one-way trip to a nursing home? But I didn't go back out there. I didn't confront her. Not yet. Instead, I opened the drawer, pulled out my old leather-bound notebook, and wrote down the date and time. November 23rd, 10:47 p.m. That was the night I stopped being a husband and started being a witness. If they want to bury me alive, I'll dig my way out, one truth at a time. I sat in that chair, the second hand of the clock tapping like a slow drumbeat in my head. The jazz had stopped, but I let the record keep spinning. That song was the one she danced to when we first met. Funny how music don't change, even when people do. Not tonight, Denise, not tonight. I lay back in bed, eyes closed, breathing even. I could hear her footsteps in the hallway. She pushed the door open gently, like a thief in her own house. She stood there, quiet. I could feel her looking at me, like she was checking if I was still here, still breathing. Her face flickered in the mirror's edge, no expression, just blank, like a mask. But I saw it. She really meant it. I didn't move. Just reached over, turned off the lamp. "If you're planning my end," I whispered, "you better plan it right." The sun hadn't even touched the horizon yet, but I was already awake, staring at the ceiling, like it owed me answers. The house creaked, like it always did when the cold crept in from the corners. Except this morning, it wasn't just the weather that felt sharp. It was the knowing. The kind of knowing you can't unknow. My body felt heavy, not from sleep, but from something meaner. Denise was downstairs. I could hear her humming, calm as a Sunday picnic. That woman had the nerve to sing after what I heard last night. Made my stomach turn. Mama used to say, "A lie don't stop being a lie just 'cause it's spoken soft." And Lord, wasn't that the truth? I got up slow, every joint creaking in protest. Walked to the kitchen, made some coffee. Black, no sugar. My hands wrapped around that mug like it could hold me together. I looked out the window, same view I'd stared at for over 30 years. That maple tree still standing crooked in the yard, that cracked sidewalk where Malik used to ride his bike. And all I could think was, how long has she been planning this? How many mornings like this did I sit here while she made her moves in silence? For a moment, I thought maybe I should just walk out. Leave quietly. Let them have it all. But then I looked around. This house had my fingerprints in. The walls. My blood in the floors. Nah, I wasn't going anywhere. That's when I saw it. Her laptop. Wide open. Right there on the dining table. Denise never leaves that thing open. She guards it like it's her heart. My chest tightened, but my feet moved anyway. I stepped over like I was walking on glass. I didn't know what I was looking for. Maybe just confirmation that I wasn't crazy. But what I found, it cut deeper than I was ready for. Subject line: Sunset Haven, admission confirmed. Admission date: next week. A forged doctor's note, claiming early cognitive decline. Financial forms already filed. Everything in motion, neat and quiet, like I was a problem being solved. I didn't panic. I took out my old flip phone, hands shaking like a loose screen door in the wind. Snapped a picture. It was grainy, crooked, but it was proof. "If they gonna write me out," I muttered, "I'ma underline the lies in red first." I had to breathe. I stepped outside, just for a minute. The cold hit me fast, but it didn't wake me like it used to. My mind was already sprinting. That's when I saw Mr. Eugene walking his old mutt, same as he did every morning since I could remember. He stopped when he saw me. "You look like somebody just met the truth and didn't like the handshake." I gave a nod. Couldn't find the words. He came closer, leaned on his cane like it held more than weight, it held memories. "My son tried to take my place once, filed papers behind my back. Thought I wouldn't notice 'cause I got gray in my beard. Ain't nothing sacred when money's on the table, neighbor." That hit different. I looked over at Eugene. He'd seen more than most folks cared to remember, and he said something else before he walked off. If they all smilin' too wide, they either plottin' or just cashed a check. I didn't smile, just turned around and went back inside. Everything felt different now. Even Malik, that boy always, had one foot out the door when I tried to talk to him. Never made eye contact too long. Always busy. Back in my room, I sat on the edge of the bed, flipped through my phone. I don't know what I was looking for. Habit, maybe. But then I saw it, an old voicemail. Never listened to. From Malik. I pressed play. "We gotta be fast. Pop's still sharp if he figures this out. We might not see a dime." That was all I needed to hear. My hand balled into a fist, but I didn't hit nothing. That's not how I move. I just sat there, remembering how I taught that boy to drive, let him stay rent-free when he got laid off, and he repaid me like this. "Blood may be thicker than water," I said out loud. "But betrayal? That runs thick too." So it wasn't just Denise. This thing had layers. That night, I pulled out a fresh notebook. Something about clean pages makes the soul sit up straight. On the first page, I wrote, "Truth doesn't die. It just waits." Then, I started writing. Names. Dates. Every little thing. If they thought I was slipping, they forgot I've spent a lifetime watching the road. Not much gets past me. This wasn't about payback. I wasn't out to hurt nobody. But I'd be damned if I let 'em write the final chapter without hearing my side first. If they want to play God with my life, I said to the quiet room, they better learn what happens when the truth resurrects. I sat at my little desk long after the coffee cooled, replaying Malik's voicemail in my head. His voice, hesitant but clear, had told me everything I feared. We gotta be fast. It felt like a blow delivered in whispers. I rifled through old bills, mortgage statements, promissory notes, anything that bore my signature, anything out of place. The overhead fan whirred, the clock ticked in steady increments. I didn't trust silence anymore. Denise had insisted I sign the power of attorney for convenience while I was still healthy. At the desk today, at the time, I believed her. Convenience was supposed to smooth life, not trap it. Now, it looked like control in a velvet glove. I reached into the drawer that held the deed documents, unlocked years ago with her help. My fingers trembled as I drew out the deed, and another envelope marked, "Legal, do not open until 2027. A cold knot formed in my gut. I undid the seal. I stacked old canceled checks next to the deed signature page. My name, my real signature, did not align with what was on that page. Then, I spotted the notary's stamp, the same date as the community parade I attended 3 years ago. I had driven that morning, stood under open sky in my denim jacket, my alibi solid. Yet that deed said, I sold my share to estate of Andrew Dalton. My heart sunk. Twist S5, unfolded in cold clarity. My name was erased from my own home. I pulled out my phone and snapped photos, careful not to disturb the papers. They made me invisible on paper before they ever made me invisible in life, I whispered. I replaced everything exactly where I found it, locking the drawer like I was sealing a tomb. I left the house, the midday sun hot but empty. The notary's office sat in a strip mall, an unremarkable facade. I stepped inside, heart pounding. The clerk looked up sharply when she saw me. I asked her name, then said, You notarized this deed. Would you notarize something you didn't read? She stammered and pulled out a ledger. Nothing. No record. She shook her head, eyes watering. She insisted she didn't remember the signature. Doubt flickered across her face when I mentioned Denise's name in the envelope. She handed me a forwarded email address linked to Denise's account. The fraud was bigger than just us. Back home, I paced. Stolen years. Stolen trust. Institutions meant to protect me. Banks, notaries compromised. I remembered leading workshops at the church about property rights. Those lessons felt hollow now. But I knew the law enough to fight. I'm not unsteady. My trust was hijacked, I murmured. I drafted in my mind, real estate attorney, affidavit of forgery, title company complaints. I resisted screaming at her. Cold resolve was my only weapon. Hurt had its place, but now strategy mattered more. My eyes landed on the envelope. Legal, do not open until 2027. My pulse quickened. Suddenly, my phone rang. Unknown number. Denise's voice. Calm. Too calm. You're going to regret digging where you don't know the ground. I answered even. Steady. I already dug it. Now, I'll bring it to light. I held the envelope in my hand, aware of its weight, evidence, threat, promise. I stepped back into the living room, still shaken from what I'd found in that envelope. Sunlight pushed through the blinds in narrow beams, cutting across the floor like bars. Everything felt too quiet. Not peaceful quiet, like the calm that comes when folks stop arguing only because they're hiding something. I sat on the edge of the old recliner, hands on my knees. A family photo sat on the mantel above the fireplace, tilted just enough to catch my eye. Us at Tybee Island 10 years ago. I remember that trip. We were laughing. We were real. Now, that frame didn't hang crooked by accident. Something sacred had shifted. Downstairs, I caught whispers. Someone on the phone or talking low. I leaned in. Denise's voice, too light, too casual. I didn't catch the words, but the tone? It was the same voice she used when she was covering something. I sat still, breathing slow. Later that afternoon, the doorbell rang. Women from the church trickled in, their Sunday best smiles in place even though it was Tuesday. Seraphine was hosting one of her Women Over 50 empowerment luncheons. Usually harmless talk of grandkids, gardens, God's timing. But today had a different hum. I kept to the side, flipping through an old magazine, just listening. Seraphine led the circle like a preacher's wife, graceful and deliberate. Sometimes, she said, pouring sweet tea, letting go of a burden is self-love. Holding on to things past their season, that's fear. The women nodded. Some, Ed, you're so strong, one of them said, touching her hand. Strong? For what? Then I saw it, tucked behind her purse, sticking out just enough for me to catch. A folded Sunset Haven brochure. I didn't blink. She didn't know I saw it. But in that moment, the luncheon made sense. This wasn't fellowship, it was marketing. She was planting the idea, grooming sympathy, laying a public case for what she was about to do to me. After the last goodbye hug and dish rinsed in the sink, she turned to me, all smiles. You and me, let's take a ride. Got something I want you to see, just a little place I heard about. For our future, for rest. She talked casual the whole drive, like it was a date. Sunset Haven sat behind tall hedges and brick signs, designed to look more like a resort than what it really was. The lobby had lemon water, soft jazz, fake warmth. This ain't a decision, she said, handing me a folder. Just look. Inside. Bright pictures, smiling folks, pamphlets promising dignity and peace. She guided me down a hallway, greeted by staff who somehow already knew my name. Too smooth. I asked to use the restroom, slipped past a half-open door. 2 nurses talked low. Get Mr. Dalton's file ready for the director. He'll need the report before Friday. I walked out quiet, told Seraphine I was tired. She nodded, still pretending. Back in the car, I stared out the window. My hands clenched the seatbelt. I could see it all now. The staged conversations, the fake kindness, the setup. She wanted to bury me softly, behind brochures and polite smiles. I used to tell the young men at the rec center, pay attention. Folks will read you a script while smiling straight through your face. That lesson hit different now. When we got home, I didn't go to my room. I walked straight to the study. Denise's planner sat on her desk, still open. She never thought I'd look. There it was. In her own handwriting, under next week's date, meeting, Sunset Haven Director, Nov 10, 10 a.m. I stared at it. A confirmed meeting. An end. Plotted without a word spoken. I whispered, not out of fear, out of clarity. So it's already scheduled. You don't give me answers. You plan my exit. The next morning started quiet. Not the kind of quiet that soothes, but the kind that watches. The buses outside moaned low as they rolled down Boulevard, same as every morning, but this time, they didn't rattle me. My hands didn't shake pouring the coffee. I wasn't anxious. I was ready. I sat at the kitchen table, steam rising slow from the mug, the city yawning into life beyond the blinds. For the first time in days, I didn't feel like I was surviving. I felt like I was choosing. The envelope marked, "Legal do not open until 2027, sat heavy on the table. Not just paper inside plans. Lies. Footprints of betrayal. I tore it open. Neat, clipped packets of paper. Typed names, legal language guardianship forms, health proxies, insurance documents, a psychological evaluation I'd never taken. My signature on all of it. Or something that looked close enough. They'd faked it all. My wife hadn't just pushed me toward a care facility. She built a legal coffin to put me in. But one page stopped me cold. A report from a doctor I never met, with a diagnosis that would have stripped me of my decision-making rights. Not just fraud collaboration. They weren't just trying to move me, I whispered, voice thick. They were erasing me. I grabbed my jacket, the folder, and left the house before Denise could step out her car. Downtown Atlanta bustled already, heat rising off the pavement, but my focus cut through it. I, parked near Auburn Avenue, walked 2 blocks to a 2-story brick building with a brass plaque, Loretta Raines, Elder Law, Miss Rains greeted me with a calm smile, same as when we met at church all those years ago. She hadn't changed, hair wrapped, eyes sharp, spirit no nonsense. Her office smelled like cedarwood and coffee, soft gospel humming from a little speaker in the corner. I sat down, spread the documents on her desk. Her eyes scanned fast, but her jaw tightened slow. "This isn't just family betrayal, Andre," she said, tapping her pen. "This is premeditated financial abuse." She walked me through the law, how guardianship fraud works, how medical documents can be manipulated, how someone in the system had to be helping Denise. She'd seen it before. Older men, quiet types, framed as incapable just to seize their homes and pensions. I asked her what we could do. "I can file for a protective injunction," she said, "but that might tip her off. If you want to catch this clean, you need to gather proof, witnesses. Someone had to hear or see something." I nodded. "Truth costs peace before it buys justice." She smiled a little. Now that's a line I wish more clients came in understanding. I left her office with a folder of legal guidance and something else, clarity. Not anger, not fear, just direction. On my way home, I stopped by the corner store off Edgewood. Ravon was stacking milk crates in back. He used to run around with Malik back in high school, always respectful, but jittery when he saw me now. "Ravon," I said, "quiet. You hear anything lately? Anything about Denise? Signatures? Arrangements?" He hesitated, shifting weight from one foot to the other. Yeah, Mr. D, one night I was over. She was on the phone saying she'd pay extra for a signature favor. I didn't think nothing of it, but yeah. She said your name. Would you be willing to speak to a lawyer?" He looked down, then back at me. "Ain't right what they doing to you. You don't deserve that." "Yeah, I'll talk." I thanked him, told him I'd have Miss Raines call him direct. As I walked out, I caught his reflection in the glass younger, unsure, but trying to do right. That meant something. Back home, I sat on the porch. Kids dribbled a basketball down the street. Laughter bounced off pavement. I used to sit with Malik right here, teaching him how to hold the ball, how to pivot. Now, that memory sat like a bruise. I whispered to myself, sometimes the people you raise ain't the same ones that stand beside you. Denise had written me off like some mistake in her checkbook, but I was still standing, still thinking, still owning my name. She built a story about my decline, but I'm still the author. I wasn't going to confront her with yelling. I was going to outmaneuver her legally, strategically, with everything she thought I'd forgotten how to use. Later that evening, the phone rang. Unknown number. "This is Miss Jordan from Sunset Haven," a smooth voice said. "We've been expecting your arrival Monday morning. Just calling to confirm." Silence. I leaned back in my chair, looked out the front window. "Ma'am," I said slow, "you might want to take my name off that list." "I ain't coming anywhere I didn't check myself into." I ended the call, stood up. Denise's car was pulling into the driveway. The sky outside was dimming when she came back. Denise carried in a few grocery bags, like it was any other evening, humming to herself, keys jingling. I didn't say a word. I sat at the kitchen table, back straight, hands resting on top of a neat stack of papers that had changed everything. She glanced at me and smiled like she didn't feel the air had shifted. "You want me to make us something quick? I picked up that bread you like. Sit down." She paused. That smile flickered. "What's going on?" "Now, Denise." She put the bags down slowly, walking to the chair across from me. Her hands fidgeted near her lap, but her eyes tried to hold steady. I laid the first page in front of her. "This says I was evaluated mentally unfit. Claims I can't handle my own finances." She scoffed. "You're misreading it." "That's not what this one," I said, laying the next paper, "shows a signature from me that I never wrote." She leaned back, arms folded. "You're being dramatic." "Ravon heard you," I said, locking eyes. "He was here that afternoon. Heard the call where you asked someone to fix the paper. He's willing to testify." Her whole body stiffened. "You're taking his word over mine?" "Ravon's not the one who changed who owns this house on paper." She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. "When lies lose power," I said, voice calm, They turned violent. Her eyes narrowed, her nostrils flared, and then she stood up and walked out. That night, I didn't sleep easy. I dozed off around midnight in my recliner with a blanket over my legs and my phone charging beside me. By morning, something felt off. I picked up the phone. Blank. No call logs. No messages. Contacts gone. It wasn't a glitch, somebody reset it. I walked into the kitchen and saw Denise fixing herself tea like nothing had happened. She didn't even glance my way. By 9, there was a knock at the door. A woman in a tan blazer and soft voice introduced herself as a social worker. "Mr. Dalton, I'm here for a wellness check. There's been a concern raised about your mental state." I didn't flinch. "Come in." We sat in the living room. I handed her a folder with my lawyer's card, copies of the forged papers, and a statement I'd written out. She flipped through it, nodding slowly. "Who filed the complaint?" I asked. "I'm not allowed to say." Denise came around the corner with that same plastic smile. "Is everything all right?" The woman looked between us, lips tight. "We'll follow protocol," she said before leaving. Denise didn't speak a word after that, but I saw her eyes wild, cornered. Later that afternoon, I drove to Marlene's place. My older sister didn't need words to know something was wrong. She pulled me into a hug, held on for a second longer than usual. Over tea, I told her everything. Marlene sat still for a beat, then leaned back. "She ain't just dishonest, she's dangerous, baby. I thought I was imagining it at first. Thought maybe I forgot signing something. But this ain't memory issues. It's theft." "She been working on this a while," Marlene said. "Women like her, they calculate." But listen, when a snake shows its skin, don't wait to see if it bites. Step back or step on it. I need someone to stand with me. "You got me," she said, firm. "I'll testify. I saw the way she treated you over the years. I just didn't have proof. Now we do." I drove home slow, parked out front for a while, before walking in. The house was too quiet, like it knew what was coming. That night, I pulled out 2 notebooks. One for everything I felt, one for everything I could prove. I wrote until my hand cramped. Emails, dates, who said what time she came in, what time she left, every little thing. I scanned the pages, uploaded them to a cloud folder that only Miss Raines and I could access. Then I sat in that quiet house and waited. She barely looked at me anymore. We moved like ghosts' meals, passed in silence, rooms avoided. The cold wasn't from the weather, it was from her eyes. "She weaponized love," I wrote. "I'm arming myself with truth." Later that week, I checked the small voice recorder I'd hidden behind the lamp in the living room. A new file. I pressed play. It was Denise. "He's catching on. If we can't move him, soon we'll lose everything." A pause. Then her sister's voice answered. "Then make him look crazy. You know how they do us. He just need one slip." I sat there, listening to it again. And again. Not even angry anymore. Just clear. They weren't just trying to push me out. They were planning to bury me while I was still breathing. I walked slowly through the hallways, lights low, shadows dancing at the corners. The house felt heavier tonight. Every wall seemed to be leaning in, listening. I paused at each door, letting silence stretch. My folder lay close by. Audio files, legal papers, witness contact info. I touched the cover. I was ready. The night felt like a battleground. I thought of a line I once read. "When the truth comes, it don't knock, it breaks down the door." That's what this moment was becoming. I steadied myself, drew a deep breath, and headed toward the living room. Tonight I would force her mask off. Dinner was quiet until she started. Denise's voice faltered. I don't know what's happening. Why am I seeing all this? Where am I?" Her words slurred just slightly. She looked at me blankly. She called me Andrew instead of Andre, asked why she was back home. "Am I in someone else's house?" she said. I stayed calm, voice low. What hospital did you go to this morning? She stammered, eyes glassy. I don't remember. The facade cracked. She sprang to her feet. You're trying to gaslight me, she hissed. I pressed play on my laptop. The audio started Denise's voice, clear and cold, admitting calls, planning signatures, plotting ownership. The guests seated around us froze, her eyes wild. She shook her head. You told them I'd be gone by Thanksgiving, I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. That's murder by calendar. She tried to defend herself, incoherently, but the recording played on. Her plans, her lies, there was no path back to. Calm. I looked around the room. Caspian, neighbors, church members, faces shifting. Respect, shock, disbelief. For the first time in years, I wasn't invisible. I didn't yell. I let the tape thunder in that small living room. I thought, you can take my home, but you cannot rob my voice. She slumped backward, defeated. I felt the shift in the air, power balanced, then tipping. She ran from the room, slamming the door behind her. I stepped into the backyard, breathing in the night air. The Atlanta breeze whispered around me. I whispered into the dark. I never asked for a throne. I only asked for truth. The quiet that settled over the house after the guests left was unlike anything I'd known. It wasn't peace, it was a vacuum. A silence carved out by truth. The audio had played. Every lie Denise ever tried to hide spilled into the open like a dam breaking. And when the last word echoed through those walls, she was gone. Not a word, not a glance back. I moved through the house slowly, my fingers brushing the edges of photos we'd once posed for together. Birthdays, graduations, Christmas mornings, faces frozen in time, pretending to be happy. The walls weren't lying anymore. They were just empty. The air was cooler now, crisp, and biting through the open window she'd always insisted on keeping closed. The curtain danced just enough to remind me this house still breathed, even if we no longer fit inside it. I sat down, phone in hand. Nothing from Malik yet. He promised he'd call once the paperwork moved through. My thumb hovered over the hospital appointment notification set by Denise for that memory test. It was still there, mocking me, like a little reminder that even in her silence, she still thought she held the pen to my life script. I deleted it. I wasn't anyone's project. Then came the sound of gravel shifting under tires. Her car. Again. I stood up slowly and opened the door before she knocked. Denise was walking up the path, stumbling, like she wasn't sure if she was ready to be here or ready to fight. Her eyes locked with mine, red-rimmed, tight. You think this is over? She spat. No, I said plainly. But the pretending is. She stormed up the steps. You had no right, none of this was your business to share. It was my life you rewrote. She raised her voice. I built this family. I held it together while you let it fall apart. I stepped onto the porch. You built a lie, Denise, held us hostage in it. She took a shaky breath. You just wanted sympathy. Poor old man, losing his mind. That one hit hard. I didn't flinch. I wanted peace, and maybe my name back. She pointed a trembling hand at me, then winced. Her breath caught. You okay? I asked. She tried to speak, but her knees gave out. I barely caught her as she slumped forward, grabbing at her chest. Denise? I lowered her gently onto the lawn. Her eyes were wide and unfocused. Stay with me, I said firmly, pulling out my phone. My hand shook, but my voice didn't. Yes, I need an ambulance. My wife collapsed. She's struggling to breathe. Neighbors were at their windows, a few on the porch next door, watching, whispering. I cradled her head, brushing the hair back from her face. Denise, you hear me? She didn't answer. The sirens came fast. EMTs took over oxygen, monitors, questions I barely registered. I stepped back as they loaded her onto the stretcher, unresponsive. Her hand slipped from mine. As they drove off, my heart beat like it wanted answers. It felt real, but so did every other thing she faked. And the timing moments after I told her that clip might go public? My gut twisted. The hospital waiting room was cold and bright. Everything smelled sterile, like grief, without warmth. I sat there, my jacket still damp from the grass. Alone. Again. A nurse walked over. "You're her husband?" I nodded. "She asked for you." I followed her down the hallway. Machines beeped softly. Denise lay still, her face pale under the harsh light. I sat beside her, touched her forehead. "You almost had me believing I was gone," I whispered. "But I'm still here. Not to hurt you, but I won't protect lies anymore." Outside her room, I needed air. I stepped into the hallway and opened my phone. The screen lit up with a storm messages, missed calls, a link from a local station. I tapped it. The screen showed my face, my voice, the audio. It was out. Miss Raines must have done it. There was no running now. Comments poured in. "We believe you. Thank you for speaking up. About time someone said the truth." I wasn't alone in the dark anymore. I leaned against the wall, watching camera flashes light up outside her hospital room window. The truth was out there, catching up to everything she tried to bury. I paced the corridor, slower now. I thought of that quote, Malcolm X. "The future belongs to those who prepare for it today." I had spent too long trying to survive. Now it was time to rebuild. I didn't want her to suffer, but I couldn't let this fade like every other storm. Her friends, her lawyers, the gossip. I had to be ready. A nurse appeared with a clipboard. "Mr. Dalton, do you want to be listed as her next of kin?" I looked at the line on the form. My name. It had always been there, but never honored. "Yes," I said. I signed. The door creaked behind me. I turned as Denise blinked up from the bed, eyes dazed. "Why did you expose me?" she whispered. I stepped closer. "Because truth doesn't let you sleep," I said, voice calm. "Not me. Not you." Morning light filtered through the hospital blinds, casting long lines across Denise's face. She lay quiet, breathing slow, vulnerable. I sat beside her bed as a social worker entered the room, eyes downcast, but determined. Together we spoke of guardianship not as a weapon, but as a safeguard. Her capacity was under question now. The papers sat between us, heavy on the table. My heart thudded with the burden of choice. I felt the dual weight this act might look like control, but inside I wrestled. Am I protecting her from herself or seizing power? I signed the temporary guardianship forms. My hand was steady. I prayed they granted clarity, not domination. Every word I wrote echoed in my mind. I remembered Maya Angelou's phrase, "I can be changed by what happens to me," but I refused to be reduced by it. I clung to that thought as the social worker nodded, measured, and left me alone with her rise and fall of breath. Later, I arrived home, shoulders heavy with paperwork and exhaustion. On the doormat lay a folded envelope, Malik's handwriting across the front. My chest tightened. Inside was a letter, raw, with sorrow. He revealed how he'd overheard Denise in late nights, asking a family lawyer about title transfers and power of attorney. He admitted his part in the dinner night that he had arranged for Rayvon to be present, knowing you'd believe it when your own eyes refused you. He couldn't face me then. He feared I'd never listen. But things spiraled. His betrayal shook me, but it also gave me clarity. The boy I raised became the architect of my rescue. I reread lines until tears dampened the paper. My son, my silent protector. He loved us both, even when the war was already started. The next morning, I began the work of rebuilding. The house was quiet, too quiet. I moved room to room, lifting frames off walls. I kept only the photos of Malik, his first steps, his graduation, the ones with Denise I boxed up, silent. A camera crew showed up, wanting a follow-up to the exposure story. I refused. "This isn't for spectacle," I told them. I closed the door. Neighbors dropped casseroles. Church sisters came with prayers. Miss Raines visited, brief, steady. She said, "You handled that with grace." Grace felt like something I hadn't allowed myself in years. I reopened a journal. No evidence this time, just pages for healing. I planted a small green sprout in the backyard, where Denise's shattered vase had once stood. New life in place of brokenness. At the hospital, Denise was doing therapy slow steps, labored words. I walked into her room. She looked up, quiet. "Can I still call this home?" she asked, voice tentative. I leaned forward. "You can call it the place that once loved you. The rest is yours to earn." We talked, not to argue, but to name wounds and fears. She admitted fear of aging, of losing control. She resented my resilience. I listened without interruption, letting her grief unspool. When she ran out of words, I left without promise. A month passed. Guardianship was transferred to a professional. I no longer held that weight. Malik came home. He sat beside me on the porch, quiet. We spoke of forgiveness, not as erasing, but moving forward. He hugged me, whispering, "Dad, I saw you. You never disappeared." I went back to church. I started mentoring younger fathers, reminding them, show up, stay present. Denise moved into a senior living center. No drama. I sent books. No claim to my old life. One evening I hosted a dinner. Friends, church leaders, Malik. No emptiness at that table. Love filled every chair. Late that night, I sat alone on the porch, stars overhead. I breathed, deep. I was almost erased, but I wrote myself back in. A quiet pride warmed me, not of victory, but survival. My phone buzzed. A voicemail. "Mr. Dalton, there's someone here claiming to be your daughter." I swallowed. A name I hadn't spoken in 30 years echoed in my mind.